curl our cues.
Oh, that's a new one. I like it.
Curly cues. No one does cursive anymore. I was always told I should have been a doctor because my handwriting's already pretty bad. Okay,
And I
if
think
folks just
while we're waiting, David, I think what we should do is run an informal poll about who has the most interesting background out of the six of us.
It's
I
John.
think we kind of know who would win.
well, you know,
I
Might
did
introduce in the
matter
just
eye of the
so.
learn.
beholder there.
I did just learn that Wade's swords to his left actually were connected with different things. I thought they were just random
Just
swords.
swords. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Nice. Like
they actually had meaning.
Braveheart, Excalibur, and the Conan sword.
Is that a Conan
Years
sword?
I've looked at those. Yeah, I had no idea.
Now the question is it the same sword through all the Conan movies, or is it?
That I don't know. That I don't
Mm,
know.
mm.
I'm not that deep.
I'm just sad you're missing the Sword of Omens.
I need to add a few more. There's always room.
Or a Hattori Hanzo blade.
Mm-hmm.
For those of us who are attending there, let you know you can use the chat there. We will be taking questions throughout this there. We do have a good amount of material to cover there because we've been busy since the last time we talked. But we will take questions as much as possible there. And as always, if there's any questions that come up that we don't get to there, feel free to write to us at info@cyentia.com. Well, we were mentioning backgrounds and so forth there, and I think Wade's going to talk about this a little bit, but I'll just start off with saying, happy birthday, Cyentia. Got the little cupcake going on. Smells good.
Thinking
Smells
nobody
like
has
data.
birthday hats or anything
I
like that.
know, I know.
Sorry.
You did not. Did you make enough for everyone, David?
Yeah.
Everyone in this household, yes.
All right.
Nice.
Well, let's go ahead and
Shall we
get
do it?
started there. Thank you one and all for attending there. This is our quarterly webinar there to talk about everything that we've been up to over the past X number of months there. Happy New Year to everyone we haven't chatted with since the new year there. Hope your spring is off to a good start. And let's jump right into the content. I'll be driving slides this evening, afternoon, or whatever time zone you happen to be in. But I'll turn it over to Wade to get us started.
Awesome. Since we just passed the milestone of our 8th birthday, I just thought it would be fun to share this. We often get, did you really start a company on April Fool's Day? And the answer is, yeah, we did. And that was kind of intentional. Part of it was just that's the time Jay and I were talking back then, and if memory serves, maybe it was at an RSA we started talking about, hey, should we do this or something, and then so we filed the paperwork shortly after. So and there's a little bit of foolish venture stuff that we just kind of ran with it in some of these early documentation things that we have, and a lot of people also ask about our name, and that is cyber knowledge is what we're going for, and we're still about that. I mean, it's nice to have something that you say you're going to do 8 years ago. A lot of companies are pivoting to completely different things a few years later after they start. But honestly, if I had to pick a mission statement now, and we still use this one. It's not anything about if I had to. We still use we exist to advance cybersecurity knowledge and practice through data-driven research. That's still on the website, still on most of our documents and things like that. So I'm glad to say we've been steadily pursuing that for 8 years. Let's hit the next bit here. Under that mission, how do we do it? We kind of had these 3 things, and this was from we never really put together a formal long mission statement and strategy document. It sort of came in bits and pieces, and then we get bored and move on to doing something else. But such that they exist, These things I went back and found in there, and again, they're surprisingly still relevant. I'm glad to say. One, we have published a lot of primary research for use by the cybersecurity community. I hope you're using it, and I hope it's useful. So I think we've done pretty well in that regard. David, I think I have a little fancy animation if you hit the space bar. So I'm giving us an A on doing that. There's a lot of stuff. If you hit Cyentia.com/research, you'll see all the stuff that we've published over the years. And the second bullet point there is helping cybersecurity product and service companies create compelling data-driven research publications. And we've always had this difficult balance of, we're a research firm, we want to do credible analysis, but the people that pay us for what we do pay us to generate mind share, brand recognition, demand generation, all of those kinds of things. And I think we've done a pretty good job threading the needle on that. I'm giving us a B in that regard. I think we could probably improve the way that we create valuable content for the companies that sponsor and fund our research. But overall, I think we're doing good, and I'm proud of the work that we've done there. Number 3 is the one where we've struggled a bit. I'm giving us a D here. We originally thought that we would spring from sort of the published research that, if you've been following us for years, you're well familiar with, over into some products and services that are data-driven for individual organizations. And we've put our toe in that water with the exploit intelligence service and Risk Retina are things that we do sell to individual organizations that are based on our research. But we haven't done a lot here, and I think we could do a lot better because we publish good research that organizations find very useful and interesting. But I don't know that we've really gotten integrated into their decision making and supported that like I would like to see. So opportunity for improvement there. But it's fun to look back and see that, again, these things are still part of what we're doing, and we're making progress. And I at least am proud of that and very grateful to have been able to do it for 8 years. Shall we move forward? All right. Recently released research. It starts to slur after that. After I can't do it many times fast. So what have we been up to in Q1? David, I think you're up first, if I recall correctly.
I believe you are correct. I'll be starting us off with one of our rare survey reports there. So we don't do a lot of survey reports here at Cyentia, but when we do, we try to do them well. And so this is one that we've done a number of times with RiskRecon there, and we're happy to produce the 2023 edition that just came out a few months ago there. Actually, not even that long ago, a month ago at most for that one, where we surveyed a number of third-party risk management practitioners and tried to figure out what are they seeing in terms of their changing drivers of their programs there. What we encourage you all to check out the report from riskrecon.com. But one interesting little bit there is we were looking at how are people providing or performing risk management of their third parties pre and post COVID. So the orange lines are 2020. The blue lines are the results that we did from the end of 2023. And you see most of them are very similar, but there are some key differences. For instance, the cybersecurity ratings, which includes solutions such as RiskRecon there, went from 42% to 61%. And that is substantial, but it actually represents a 50% increase in the use of security ratings from the previous values. So that is a market jump. At the same time, there was a large decrease of 25% in relative amounts of both remote assessments and on-site assessments. So I did see that people are shifting from these kind of more formal assessments to more remote hands-off cybersecurity ratings. I thought that was really interesting. And there's more nuggets that we found within that report. Another report we did with RiskRecon is risk to the nth party degree, where we took a look at hundreds of relationships within the RiskRecon platform of saying this party is tracking this other party as part of their managed portfolio of third-party risk management there. we produced a lot of interesting insights from that, two of which are displayed on this slide. The one on the left indicates a typical distribution. If you look at that red square that is within the center, that's the host organization that is looking at that. And each dot represents a firm that they are tracking and that their partners are then tracking in turn. So you go out from that core circle of parties that the firm is tracking, all of their third parties and their third parties, et cetera, there going on to the eighth party. So there's lots of different industries represented there. You can see there's lots of finance involved in this particular distribution. You can see more within the report. Also of interest there is this heat map chart there showing the relative who is better or worse in absolute security as measured by risk recon between the partner and the first party organization. When you're looking at the third and fourth parties there, the partner is typically better than the host organization, better or same grade. But then once you get out to sixth, seventh, and eighth degree connections within the supply chain, that flips dramatically over to that the third party or the nth party is much more has much weaker security than the host organization, which again emphasizes the need for not just managing risk at the third party level, but out to the fourth and fifth and nth degree as well.
Another report that we just recently released is the Veracode State of Software Security in 2024. And we've been doing these for a few years now. And every year, it's so cool. Like they have so much data and so much interesting findings. This year, we actually decided to focus on security debt, which doesn't have a clear standard definition. And for ease of comparison across organizations, we set it to 12 months after the flaw was discovered in applications. And so right away, what we found is like 70% of organizations had some form of security debt. That's, flaws that have been around for a year. And 46% of those of any organization has had critical security debt. That's the flaw labeled as critical. Now, of course, these are sort of big numbers and sort of hard, numbers sort of floating out there. But on the next slide, we talked about the distributions. So basically, when we looked at the amount of flaws that we're seeing, the percent of flaws that ended up being security debt, you can see we've got a big wide range up there. Like most of the organization, they're just all over the place. You can't even say most of the orgs. And actually the 25th, 50th, and 75th percentile are almost right at 25, 50, and 75. So we're seeing these pretty well spread out. But when you get to critical security debt, that drops way down. So we see a lot of organizations are keeping that critical security debt down to hopefully a minimum. So anything to add there, Wade? Did you have any thoughts on that? You're muted.
Rookie mistake, 8 years in and still goofing up with the mute button. Unbelievable. Go to that next slide real quick. Sorry. I'll just add, if you look on the sort of mosaic plot on the left, Jay, like you said,
That's a good
in
one.
general, the amount of critical security debt across applications is pretty small. That little upper left corner of debt that is critical is 3% of all flaws. So a pretty tiny amount. I won't go into the chart on the right, but there's some stuff in the report about capacity. Can organizations fix all their critical security debt? In general, the answer is yes. Can they fix all flaws? Nope, probably not, but you really don't need to. And we get into that difficult question of prioritization report. So check it out if you're struggling with driving down all that debt across applications.
Yeah. Another thing recently, we just announced that we're taking on a EPSS sponsors to help push out some EPSS research around EPSS, and Cyentia is a major contributor to the EPSS effort. And this is something I presented on last week at VulnCon, and hopefully will be in the actual research a little bit. But a lot of people think about exploitation activity, that vulnerabilities is sort of a one-way trap. Once something is exploited, it should be on a list. It should always be treated as exploited. It's exploited everywhere very rapidly. But this chart is saying something different. When we looked at that exploited activity, And we said, when was the last exploitation activity observed for a given vulnerability that we saw activity for? You can see basically like in the quarter that we're in 2024, the first quarter, 56% of everything exploited was seen in this quarter. And then going back, as soon as we get back a year ago, roughly one in every four vulnerabilities haven't been observed as exploited in the last year. The challenge, of course, is which quarter is that? Which 25% of those are actually not being seen as exploited? And so a lot of what we talk about is, being able to grab this data, look at it, and go after it. The next chart is actually looking at performance of EPSS over time. And this is another thing we want to highlight in the upcoming research we're going to publish. But this is a precision recall plot, or in the language of vulnerabilities, a coverage and efficiency chart. And we want things to move to the upper right. And so when we started with EPSS v1, we're down pushing that lower left, which is still better than other scoring systems out there and a lot of the individual sources. So we're doing better with v1, but v2, we see it improve. And these are essentially daily estimations of EPSS publishing scores. And with the benefit of hindsight, we can go back and say, how did that estimation do? And we're creating these lines because EPSS is a continuous range, and wherever you set the threshold will create a single point on these lines. But you want these lines to push to the upper right. And you can see with that last version, v3, we're pushing into that upper right. We're getting better and better with performance of EPSS, trying to estimate the probability of exploitation activity in the next 30 days.
So that was published stuff or things that we have talked about at recent conferences. And now we're moving into the what is coming down the pipe real soon now. We'll talk mainly here about the Iris ransomware, but we also have another report coming out with XM Cyber, and we'll kind of preview an update to the Cyentia reference library.
All right, so hop in the DeLorean with me. We're going to go to the not too distant future when we'll be releasing the Iris focused on ransomware. Obviously, ransomware is just taken over headlines for the last several years, and we're excited to bring the Iris treatment to the topic. It's a dimension of Iris research that we've been looking forward to doing more, not just on ransomware, but potentially on other patterns in the future as well. The big thing to know about this going into it, we're looking at over 14,000 ransomware events, lots of money, lots of records affected. As we go to the next chart, we'll see we look at how ransomware stacks up against the other patterns that we talk about throughout the Iris line of research. And then you can see within just the last 5 years, about a third of the events in our data set are taken up by ransomware, which, if you've been around for more than those 5 years in the security industry, you'll recognize what a sea change that has been in terms of transitioning from more kind of stock and barrel data breaches, right? System intrusion kinds of things that we've talked about for so long. And now having a much more focused transition into ransomware has been pretty remarkable. As we move to the next slide, we can kind of see when I think about what Iris does in a big picture way, I always think of Mythbusters. We look at all the headlines we see, all the coverage we see about a certain topic, but what does the data say? So there are places where we can say that the myths are confirmed, and other places where we think the myths have been busted. And if you want to learn more about that, well, you're going to have to download the report when it comes out, and we will make sure to email you when that happens if you're on our mailing list. Something else we're excited about coming up is our continued research with XM Cyber, our exposure management platform partner. And the big solution, or the big problem they're trying to solve, is identifying where critical assets are and how those critical assets are connected to exposures throughout environments, particularly for hybrid entities, those who have both on-prem and cloud environments. And even multi-cloud, if they're so unfortunate to be in that case. But this is just kind of a sampling of what we'll go into in that report. This is looking at where the critical assets are exposed in terms of on-prem, identity, and cloud environments. And you can see that there are some pretty wide differences across just sectors, just being one aspect of that analysis. And there's a lot more in the report. I think that one's a 25 pager, so it's a good read.
Indeed. Also coming up, we have less than on the report side and more of a meta report thing. We have Cyentia Reference Library, the next generation. Cue your dramatic theme music here. That will get us copyright if I sing it too much. So we have maintained for several years with the benefit of sponsorship, the Cyentia Reference Library there. We have received a new sponsorship that is enabling us to do even more. There's this technology that's coming out. You may have heard about it called AI and ChatGPT and LLMs. I don't know. We figured we'd throw some of that
It's
on
obscure. It's obscure.
It's obscure. It's obscure. It's okay if you haven't heard of it there. But in all seriousness, we are very excited about the possibilities that this provides to our library of not just our reports, but all the reports that sometimes, as we kind of tongue-in-cheek say, all the reports that are fit to publish. We have over 3,000 of these reports. So if you can imagine being able to have a dialogue with something that has read and digested all of these reports and able to surface facts, figures, and concepts to you there, I think you'll be really excited with what we've got coming for you in the very near future. If you want to know more about that or all the reports that we have been talking about to date, you can always reach out to us on our mailing list, cyentia.com/contact, sign up for the mailing list, and you will be amongst the first to hear when this is ready for your tender mercies. But that's not all. We have other things coming up on the slightly more distant horizon coming up later on this year. First of which is the IRIS 2024, the next report in our much beloved IRIS series. And I realize we haven't introduced Joran yet. Joran is our newest member of the Cyentia team. He joined us, was it January?
Yep.
January, my goodness, time flies.
Mm.
Joran, great to have you with the team here, and I'll turn this over to you to talk about what we're doing with the IRIS 2024. Actually, maybe Wade, do you want to talk about what we've started on this so far? I'll do it because you're on mute. So.
I'll jump on this slide. So yeah, we are coming out with an IRIS 2024. If you've been following the IRIS series, we did a 2020, we did a 2022, and one of these difficult patterns, there should be a 2024, and I'm happy to say there will be. I would expect this out October-ish, later in the year, not super late, but we are just barely beginning work on this, and that's what Joran is going to share. Some of the charts on the right, I just wanted to share because the IRIS series has been popular. We're nearing 20,000 downloads on the IRIS 2022. And it keeps going up is what I find really cool about this. I mean, that line is still going after, almost 2 years, 1.5 years out, and people are still reading it. So we get to add to this great library of content that is out there about cyber risk analysis and quantification.
All right. So we'll hop into John's DeLorean again and blast off even further into the future here. And so this is not finished research, unlike some of the other stuff we've seen before. This is more of a preview and is more sort of an indication of some of the topics we want to explore in this year's report. And so one of the things we'd like to sort of dig into is looking at losses associated with different breaches, but breaking that down into different components. So what you're looking at here is a summary of losses over a large collection of breaches. And on the left, you have the 50th or median, the 50th percentile of the median, and the 95th percentile of all losses, sort of broken down by different categories of breaches. So things like ransomware and system intrusion and scams and frauds sort of incur the highest amount of losses, and down at the bottom, you see stuff like insider misuse, physical threats, and accidental disclosure. But over on the right, we've broken that down into different components. So instead of just the total loss, we have different sort of categories of losses that organizations suffer. So things like specific fines and penalties, financial damages, response costs are just the costs of responding to the incident itself, and other sorts of legal things like plaintiff legal fees. And so a couple things to call out here that sort of jump out are things like the defacement and denial of service categories, where understandably, essentially all of the costs associated with those types of breaches amount to just responding to the breach in the first place. Whereas for something like accidental disclosure, the bulk of the costs are, land in fines and penalties. And so this kind of broader view and sort of more detailed breakdown of losses by organization into different kinds of losses and the kinds of losses they incur is one of the things we're hoping to dig into later this year.
And I will add that if you have ideas that you would like to see in the IRIS 2024, let us know. Because, I mean, again, this is something we wanted to chase down. Hey, can we make any sense? We've never done that in any of the IRIS bits about loss components. But maybe you have some other great ideas and we can give it a shot and see what the data has about those. So send them in. Sponsorship opportunities. Figured we'd hit these to end things up here. We do exist to put out good research, but we got to pay people and their families as well. And we think we offer good value in these kinds of partnerships. So a couple that are right there are, Jay mentioned the EPSS study. This is the first ever analysis of EPSS performance. You can read a little bit more about what we're trying to do there. And if your organization uses EPSS to prioritize vulnerabilities or whatever else, this one would be of particular relevance, I think. And there's ways you can support that, both with data and with sponsorship funds, I'll add. We have done some risk retina for a few industries, and we've mainly sold those to enterprise organizations rather than published them publicly. But we have not produced them for all sectors. And that's something that we thought, hey, maybe there are organizations out there that would be interested in sponsoring, for example, a retail sector retina, which we have not created yet. And we haven't sold that to an enterprise buyer. So, if there are sectors that you would like to see IRIS style or risk retina style analysis and you want to make that possible, hey, let us know. And also, the 2024 IRIS is sponsored. Thanks to CISA is sponsoring that in full. But if you look on our Cyentia.com/IRIS page, we do sort of the main pieces, 2020, 2020, 22, and 2024 now. But in the middle of those, we've kind of done like the IRIS Extreme. We took the 100 largest events and did a deep dive. We did the IRIS Tsunami on multi-party large-scale incidents. And those have been sponsored by other organizations. So if you have an idea of an IRIS-like thing that you would like to see out there and want to sponsor it, let us know what that might be.
Yep,
and I think probably have some questions. I think I saw.
Yep, I got a question from Pippin asking, when is EPSS v4 slated for? And the answer is quote unquote real soon now. We were just I had a meeting this morning talking about that, and we have at least one new data source we're going to be adding into that. And right now is the time that we want to start working on that. And part of the challenge that we have, though, is that since the last time we updated it last year, we've greatly expanded the adoption of it. And right now we have basically one pipe in which to put our data. And so when we change from 3 to 4, the next version, basically what we did last year is one day it was version 2 and the next day it was version 3. And we saw this jump of scores. We're talking about this in the special interest group through FIRST, is should we do that same thing, or how do we roll it out? How do we make sure that the impact is not going to be crazy? And that actually is going to be probably a bigger problem than actually developing the next version. And I don't expect it to be huge improvement, but I do expect it to get better than where we are now. So real soon now. And then there's another EPSS question from Pippin. They talk about EPSS, mention that they don't think it should be a high-ranking metric. How should I apply this to any data I should reference? So this is a very EPSS specific question, but basically EPSS is measuring threat, and you talk about risk being threat, vulnerability, and impact should be part of that larger risk scenario. And there's FAQs on the first.org/EPSS site that talk about this.
Awesome. Well, I think that's the end of our questions. We are now slightly over time, though. Thank you so much for joining us there. If there's questions that come up that you didn't get a chance to put in there, you can always reach out to us at info@cyentia.com for all your greatest data-driven security elements there. So thank you so much for attending. We look forward to talking with you again real soon now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.